Fraud Task Force is the fact that we now have a leader on the anti-fraud side at DOJ who is going to work with the task force, who's going to use the resources that we're putting together to make sure that we really supercharge this anti-fraud effort. So let me just say a few things about this, and then I want to kick it over to Andrew. And a lot of the anti-fraud protections that existed in our government for a very long time were actually turned off by the Biden administration. So we think fraud has been a problem for a long time. It became a massive, massive problem under the Biden administration. We're going to do a number of things. First of all, we're going to turn back on those anti-fraud protections so that all of these cabinet officials are looking at what's going on and focusing on it. The second thing is that we're going to take a whole of government approach. So much of what's going to make the anti-fraud task force work is that we're communicating across different departments. So when Bobby Kennedy is talking to Scott Bessent about things that he's seeing in Medicare and Medicaid, when Scott is seeing things at Treasury, when Brooke is seeing things at Agriculture, when Scott is seeing things at Housing and Urban Development, what we're going to actually do is force the bureaucracy to take this seriously and work together as political principles to make sure that we stop allowing fraudsters to steal the American people's money. This is not just theft of the American people's money, this is also theft of critical services that the American people rely on. Some of you have heard me tell this story before, but I think that the autism scam that we've seen in the Somalian parts of Minnesota really illustrates well what's been going on across whole layers of our government. So you have a program set up under Medicaid to help autistic children and their families get the resources that they need, because of course we know that when you have a kid who's on the spectrum, it requires a little bit more help, a little bit more services. And so the government, enforcing the mandate from the American people to be kind and compassionate to our citizens, has set up this program to help families who are dealing with these particular struggles. Now, what we've seen is Somali fraudsters at an industrial scale taking advantage of that program to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And there are two separate tragedies there. The first tragedy is that you have people who pay into the federal government, who pay into the IRS, who pay their taxes expecting that those taxes will go to help their fellow citizens, and it's not going there. It's going to help fraudsters. That's tragedy number one. And the more important tragedy is that you have families who need these services who are unable to get them because people are getting rich off of fraud schemes instead of making sure that autistic children and their families get access to these resources. And unfortunately, that story, while it's very concrete and very obvious what we're seeing in Minneapolis, it is replayed again and again and again across many states and across many different programs. It has to stop. The President of the United States has ordered us to stop it, and that's what this task force is going to do. This task force is finally stood up. We've got allies at Department of Justice now who are going to take this thing by the horns. We've got allies across every major significant department, and we are going to stop the fraud that's being committed against the American people.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'd like to begin by thanking President Trump and the Vice President for the confidence they put in me to help lead the task force. America is the most generous nation in the history of the world. For decades, Americans have turned over trillions of their tax dollars to social welfare programs to help their neighbors and fellow citizens through hard times. They've done so on the basis of social trust, the belief that their government, state, and federal will do the right things with their dollars and that their fellow citizens will honestly participate in these programs. Fraud shreds the social trust on which these programs and our entire nation depend. This fraud crisis is thus existential. If we fail to address it, the fabric of our nation will swiftly unravel. The American people feel like they are getting ripped off, and they're right. As the President's executive order establishing this task force declared, extensive, undetected fraud can only exist in a system that ignores it. And fraud is indeed easy to ignore when grasping politicians are in on the con. For years, the Biden administration and its allies in Democrat-run states knew of this corruption in our federal benefits programs and did nothing about it. Their failures have robbed every American citizen of their tax dollars, but even worse, they've deprived American citizens who actually need these services. Every dollar diverted to a fake hospice or a fake autism center, every dollar paid to an upcoding hospital deprives an American citizen who needs these essential services. Fraud therefore wounds the neediest among us, the very people that Americans want to help when they fund our social welfare programs. Finally, we have a president who is doing something about this corruption crisis. We are here today because President Trump and Vice President Vance won't ignore it, and we won't ignore the public officials who have facilitated it. Our work on this task force will be to develop a comprehensive national strategy to combat the corruption of our federal benefits programs and to assist the Department of Justice in prosecuting those who have corrupted them. In doing so, we will restore the social trust that has been lost because of mismanagement and fraud. Together, we can remove the scourge of fraud in our federal benefits programs, and and we can restore public confidence in their efficacy and integrity.
And if you knew what I knew about the people at this table, you would understand just how committed this government, this administration is to ending this massive theft of American taxpayer dollars. I think what's important for Americans to understand about how pervasive and widespread the fraud is that all of our systems were set up and established for a high-trust society. I think that most citizens probably assume that there's some verification process that takes place for the receipt of most federal benefits. The reality is that there is not. This is particularly true in blue states, willfully true in blue states, in which all of these programs are operated entirely on the honor system. No verification takes place before individuals are enrolled in or receive these benefits. So as a simple example, if you're a Somali refugee living in Minnesota, you could lie about how many children you have, you could lie about what your immigration status is, you could lie about your marital status, you could lie about child care, you could lie about disability, you could lie about all these things and many more, and nobody in the state of Minnesota would validate any of these facts before writing you a check. We at the federal government are simply sent a bill from the state of Minnesota for the cost of providing these services in the aggregate. So to take the food stamp program as an example, SNAP, and that of course is administered by Secretary Rollins, we do not know the names of any SNAP recipient in the state of Minnesota. We just get a blank check. We have asked the state repeatedly and tried to compel the state unsuccessfully to turn over their SNAP enrollment rolls so we could ascertain such basic facts as, are these people even legally eligible to receive these benefits? And the state has refused, absolutely categorically refused. And in fact, the state has spent millions of dollars in court for the singular purpose of trying to prevent the state from ascertaining the identity of a single SNAP recipient in the entire state of Minnesota. Think about what this does to public trust, social trust, people's faith in the system. Imagine in a community, a working class community in the Twin Cities, say a native Minnesotan who works as a lineman or works as a construction worker, works in any job that requires hard work, dedication, focus, who's worried about his ability to support for and provide his family. And then imagine that he has a neighbor who's a Somali refugee who arrived 2 years ago, has a Mercedes and no financial stress and no worries at all in the entire world, and never seems to ever go to work at all because he just went to an office in the state, lied on a piece of paper, and got unlimited free money forever for life. That is the system that is being run, and that is the corruption that this task force under the leadership of the Vice President is going to demolish.